Hello, hello. How's it going, everybody? We got Kitty visiting us right away when we start here. Today we are going to go through the positioner plugin. It might be a little bit of a shorter stream, but I might try to check out the docs and or commit to the docs at the same time that we're doing it. The reason to use the positioner plugin is that it has a few presets, some of which are dynamic based on the operating system. So rather than trying to, in the cases where you need to position a window, rather than trying to do that by manually calculating it and creating it yourself, which is what we've actually done, we can use this plugin, which also throws in the operating system variables. So one of the things that we have in our system tray app is positioning the window relative to the system tray. That changes depending on what operating system you're on. So we're going to go ahead and pull that in and kind of go through stuff. She is very needy right now. All right. Did I feel like I might have forgotten to click the one button to like hook things up. All right. I think we're good. Well, we'll see if the chat works and such. All right, we're gonna go ahead and pop over. I've got a few things open already. We have this in the template. So if you're interested in creating a system tray app, you can follow the docs. We've got some guides at least on pieces of this. But on stream we've put together a template. You can watch the replays of our past streams. I mean, I think I have a playlist in it too. So head over to the channel and check that out if you're interested in how we implemented it. But if you want to use a template that wires together a bunch of Tauri plugins for this, what I'm presuming is I'm expecting this use case to be like a strong use case, something that would be somewhat common or typical to do. So rather than following all of these separate guides to implement each thing, you copy this template and it's got a bunch of them set up already. The downside is that obviously we need to keep that up to date, separate from, or out of band of what all the other upstream work in Tauri is, because it's currently under my namespace. From that though, we've created this, the stream to do, and we also did this on stream, and it is a little to do app. So as we're going through, like I'm going through right now, what we're going to do in the stream, we can write it in a to do app. I haven't quite got to the point where I'm like really using it in my workflow. So in this case, we're actually going to run and use it while we're running it. But we're going to implement it, the positioner plugin, in this, because this is kind of got a full setup already, or at least as much of a full setup as we can hope to have. So let's remove these. These seem to be very sticky, stickier than I would have anticipated. And I'm not sure the reason for that. So these are through React using the store plugin. So if we refresh now, okay. Some seems like if we clear all the items or something, or maybe there's some async process going on here that if we delete them too quickly, it doesn't work. So I might need like a delete all button or something, but that's gonna be something for future me, yeah. And I also want to get rid of this. Like I don't. Clearly, I was testing it. So, anyways, what we're going to do today is we're looking at the positioner plugin. So we want to first we're going to check out the existing docs on the positioner plugin. Then we are going to I guess we pull it in right away. I guess maybe a middle step would be check the API reference, because I imagine we're going to need that. Look at enums. So I know in this plugin, part of the functionality or the pieces that actually help in the positioning, those are set up as enums. And I don't know how much that's documented, so we're going to go look at that. Then we're going to add the plugin to the app. And I think we're going to then, our stretch goal is going to be like update the docs. And we'll probably want to double check to make sure nobody has done that already, but okay, so this might be part of the reason too. We're getting potentially some re-renders or something that. So maybe that store plugin issue won't be a thing once we build it, but we will come back to that. Okay, so first item on the list. I wrote in, right? Let's look at it. Check out the existing docs. There is in the guides, under plugins, there's the positioner plugin. You'll see that many of these are still work in progress. If you're interested in committing to or helping push Tauri forward, docs are going to be one of the bigger things that need effort to get to that final stretch of V2 stable. So any help in docs is always going to be appreciated. We did last week, we did a stream. If you're interested in kind of a little bit of the background or nitty gritty on how to really dive into it, feel free to watch the last stream. We added this on stream, and we added the global imports for everything. So I think all of our guides now should have the global imports, and I'm hoping I didn't miss anything. But hopefully that's helpful for the folks doing that. So positioner plugin. We are so specifically this like leading documentation, I think, is probably something that is going to be the most useful for adding. We do need to double check that. What do I have right now? Doesn't say my Rust version. I think I might have the real. I can't remember when I updated last. It's probably been a little bit on this computer. So I think in general, most of these that are work in progress, the setup is probably sufficient and usage is maybe as well. But the like what and why, and because those are probably the big questions to answer that would be helpful up at the top of this. Because right now, as I'm reading it, yes, that's helpful. It's helpful, but there could be more context here on like why would you want to use this? Because I can position my windows myself, like, well, how is this helping me? So that I think that would be helpful. And also, I like I do like these links up at the top, but this API reference, I think we might specifically in some situations, especially here, when we have a plugin that's highly dependent on enumeration, so enums, usage is fine. This is helpful, but we might want to just point out, hey, go to the API reference for the full list of them. So setup, automatic and manual. We do need to update the features. Interesting. I wonder if that's because this doesn't take or handle the cases where you need to enable features. So this is relative positioning. So it must entree event. So it handles the events. So if we look at actually the manual setup, we add it to the create, the lib, and then we add this bit. Okay, so when we're swapping back and forth, in reality, we've got this section that is applicable to both, which makes sense. And I like the comment. This is helpful. Like, this answers the why. Why do I need to do this? We could maybe add a little bit more context, but I think that's probably sufficient for what this is trying to get across. And then this is like the quick snippet, how to use it. JavaScript and Rust. So here would be in the Rust side of things, whenever we want to move it, we would call it this way. So I guess we'll have to see how we have things implemented in the stream to do. I suspect that we're probably going to go with JavaScript. And then we would have to get in permissions, but TBD. Okay, so I think that probably is check out existing docs. I think on top of that, we're going to check out. So that's in the plugin workspace, I think. We're going to look at. No. We want to see if there's anything in the docs. Repo, specifically the repo. Handful of PRs. Update. I just want to make sure that there's nobody that has touched this or updated otherwise, and it's sitting in review, that we could, rather than committing directly to and updating the docs, we could provide suggestions. I do not see anything. Looking to make sure I don't kick my cat. She was right below me before. Okay, so I don't see anything in review. So I think whatever we have as far as content goes, we're looking at this. So we've kind of looked through the main guide content. I think, again, this is probably the bit that's can be elaborated on. Because by the time you've determined that you actually do want to use it, this might actually be sufficient. And then we're going to, if you need any more, then you're going to end up going to the like type doc, the API reference. So, of which that's what this is. We have only the one function. I am actually curious what this does over the other methods. I'm going to open that up for so we come back to it. But for the most part, what we're getting out of this is the enums. So bottom center, bottom left, bottom right. Okay, so we have like a grid basically. We can put it in each of top, middle, bottom, left, center, right. Basically a matrix of all those. And then the next piece we have is the tray versions of those. And I do wonder, so we've got a tray bottom, and a tray center. So we'll want to try those out. And but part of the reason that I want to add this is I'm curious how it ends up looking on Mac. I don't know that we're going to necessarily be able to get that far, but as we're looking at the code, we might be able to derive some of that too. Okay, the code points to the move window function here, and it fires off an invoke. That is a plugin, so it's not using the built-in directly. So if we look at the plugin, we should be able to line up the command in here with that. This entree event, you can see the feature here. One in the documentation, when it says you need to add the extra lines of code to the setup for the entree event, that would be this function. So we can see that on events, we handle the scale factor, and then we position size. So that must be entirely to handle scaling, which I guess makes sense. You know the size of the monitor, and you do your move function based off of that, and then you need to readjust if the scale is different. I am kind of curious how that's all done. And then what we end up having is that this is the command. So when we fire off the evoke in that plugin, we're calling a window.move window. It is being fired off from so if we're using the JavaScript, we're firing it off from a web view. It's hitting, or it's using the invoke to basically run this command. This command though has the context of what window that came from. So we don't need to do all the code. I mean, from the plugin writing perspective, we don't need to do all that code to figure out like what window you're a part of. To give some context to that, if we look at, I think it's in the tray here. These are our handling events. When we click, we're either hiding or we're repositioning. I guess in that case anyways, we're having to get the window get current. So in theory, we wouldn't need to use that move. I think we could basically just pull the enums and use the enums to do this calculation. So we might try that because we're already calling the window set position. And that takes a logical position. What does the invoke take? 2. So it's 2 based off the enums. That's the lib. So when it gets this, it is move window position. Thought I heard the kitty being getting into trouble there. The invoke we have enums. Position 2. So move window only allows you to set these positions. So if we need to do any adjustments off of that, we might not be able to use this directly. But with those enums, how is it translating those? Is that in the Rust side of things? Here's the iffy build. Okay, so here's the enums. A window extension that provides extra methods related to positioning. So I think these pieces might be the reason that we won't be able to use the move window from JavaScript here, because there's some translation happening. Yeah, okay. You might note that this is similar to the code that we wrote on the JavaScript side of things. See, we're getting some plus and some minus. And here you can see where the enums are actually implemented. So we wouldn't be able to use the enums and pass those directly to a move function on the within the web view, because the translation is happening in Rust. So it's firing off a, move to this enum. The translation, taking that and actually making the move happen, is done through this. So based off the enum that we've passed in, it's doing these calculations. So we would have to use that move directly. We can't use it as a positioning piece. Okay. So something that, like, as far as context goes here, we might want to say something in the vein of the positioner plugin allows one to move the window to preset conditions, because you're not going to be able to modify it easily, or I don't think it would make sense in any way to move it. Yeah, see, like, this has got some features to like calculate, so I can. If we could do the reverse, and we could make like adjustments to it, move window this plus a certain amount of pixels or something, then we could use this more fully as like the move library. But it feels like it's very much designed to be preset conditions, at least at this point. So I think that probably would be the context that I would give here, is if you want to move your window to preset conditions, more configurable preset condition. Well, it's not even configurable even. It's we would want to differentiate between, if we look at the configuration, you can set center here. The next step is to use the positioner plugin. That's like center. That's like this configuration plus plus. And then like the next step there would be you taking or looking at this code and implementing very specific calculations yourself. Okay, so I think that kind of crosses off this little bit here. Check the API reference. Let's go ahead and add the plugin. So we'll run this. We're gonna have to stop this right here and add. So this will add the plugins to Cargo, do this, and then install. Interesting. I'm going to go ahead and grab this. We want to, do I have, here, I've got a docs, whoa, that's not what I'm going to do. I've got the docs open. I'm going to just dump it here for right now. That is potentially something that we need to resolve, but that is something we're not going to do right now. Because what we'll do here is specifically deal with effectively the manual version. We'll review the manual version. So we want to make sure that it's listed in dependencies. And it put it in dependencies, but in this own separate piece. This configuration here makes sure that it's not a dependency if your target OS is Android or iOS, don't add it as a dependency. This is only going to be applicable to desktop, is effectively what that code is doing. Alternatively with Git. So we need to make sure that it put it in the lib. In our case, we've got a main, which for the context that we care about here, effectively the same. Ordering, I don't know how much it matters. I think I'm going to do this though. I feel like global shortcut is more of an OS level thing. Feels like something that should go first. But we don't have any context of that here. I don't know how much that's gonna end up mattering. Okay, so we're gonna enable the feature. So version equals and features. Got an extra comma in there. Save. Okay. And then we need to set up this event. I'm going to include their comment in there because I think that is also helpful context to have here. And hopefully we are set. Tauri dev. So we'll see if that matters. Select a version. Oh. Package app depends on. Now, is this a Rust? This looks like Rust. It depends on this with features this, but it does not have these features. Got it. So we've attempted to enable or otherwise install this with that feature. That seems to be a bug in our documentation. It could be that we updated something upstream here and we didn't carry that through here. It doesn't actually say anything specifically about the features. If he cargo tray Tauri. Okay. Well, that's tray icon. Feature tray icon. And what version of that? What version is that? Oh. Yep, okay. Do I want? I don't know if I want that or not. Okay, when I added this. Yeah, okay, it's just beta there. Is there a flag? Is there a flag to get the beta version? I don't remember. I am just going to take that out of all of them, because I don't believe that is necessary. And it'll make upgrading easier. Okay, so if we do this again, what are we working with? We should now have a crate of the appropriate version that has that feature. And actually that, if we come back to this error, adding that, yeah, so there's some resolution stuff here going on. And I think that is effectively the error. So I'm going to leave that here because we've effectively solved what that error is. But I think part of the issue was that it was installing the wrong version. But why is the reason I'm going to kind of come back to it. Okay. Now, use of undeclared type in main RS. Tray icon builder. Okay. Is that all it's looking for? Yep. Okay. That might be worth adding. I wonder what our I'm gonna just add some notes here. We're gonna call this Markdown. When we run the add command, do we differentiate for betas? I feel like I hadn't run into this, which is why hadn't I run into that before? I don't think I've run into that before. So we'll come back to that. And then the other thing we wanted to look at was, well, we run the add command. I guess this is a special case because we're specifically saying setup. So in positioner plugin, add the use for the snippet. Okay, so we got that running again. Appears to be working. Yeah, see, like, look, it just resolves back to the old one. So the interesting. The content that we put in there before is now gone. I am definitely that store plugin. I'm wondering why it's so sticky like this. So the downside of like working on the thing they're using, I guess, it appears to be compiling at least. So I think we're at the point where we can pull this in. And if what we're triggering all of these cases based off of a click in JavaScript at the moment. Honestly, we could probably move the tray stuff to. We'll probably move some of the tray stuff over, but like do the positioning in Rust. But that's not something we're gonna do right now. I don't think. I don't see the immediate value in it, so we're going to not bother basically. Did we actually get it installed? It doesn't appear to have installed it either there. So let's go ahead and pull this in. We are going to add it here. And I think we're gonna have to like look up the version number. What's the fast way to do that? This. Beta 7. So we gotta stop this. I'm gonna do install. It's possible that we might need to bump some of the other ones. Because since we did this, I don't know if that's gonna mess things up. Since we've started this, there's been a release. So reoptimizing dependencies because lock file has changed. Sure. All right. So if we open this and do an inspect. Okay. That seems to be coming in now. We do need both move window and position. Move window effectively is going to replace all of these. We do have TypeScript in this, so we do have some help, either through TypeScript or through IDE. In this case, I think it's a bit of both. Let's put it in the top right for right now. So the window get current call, we still do need that. So despite the fact that we're using this, which is async, we still need to get the window because we're hiding and we're setting focus, or showing it, I guess, would be the alternative version. So if we do this, and now when we click this, permissions, yes, that is the bit that we forgot. I kind of wonder if we make a note in here about permissions. It is immediately below it, but the fact that like I've got this nice snippet here and I can copy and paste it. It's at least something to consider. We need to put, where is that? Schema, capabilities, permissions, store. Do we have a good place to slot this? In some ways, this is underneath the tray. I think I'm actually kind of okay putting it here. Okay, so we're going to get a rebuild. Including on the right side of things, and then it's going to reopen and remount. There we go. So we clicked, and it is very much in the top right. So if we do dot, let's do bottom center. And I do have a widescreen. So when I click this, it is going to be offset. That is bottom center of my screen. It looks bottom left-ish. You can see that it's being cut off though. I actually have the taskbar in Windows hidden from what you can see. So when I click this, it looks like it's just kind of popping up out of nowhere. That's actually coming from the taskbar. So when we click this to show the position, it is actually being attached completely to the bottom of my screen. So I think that's good as far as that goes. Now I want to try the tray one. So there's tray bottom and then tray just positioned. So if I do tray right, I'm curious what that is going to give us. Position not set. Now, speaking of context, we did have an error when we first installed it. Ooh, there's also this. Requires at least 175. What version of Rust do I have? Come on, really? I don't have cargo. Can I do it down here? Cargo is just going to give me the cargo version, though. Okay, here we're going to do it this way. 176. So we should be good. If you're interested, this is through Starship. I've got the shell is the terminal is Windows Terminal. Lovely naming. This is currently Windows. If it wasn't now obvious. The shell is new shell, which is Bash-like, written in Rust, and the prompts are done through Starship. So I can, through their configuration, determine what's shown. So when I go into a directory that has a cargo.toml, it's going to tell me what version of Rust I've installed. Not realize. How's it going? Thanks for stopping by. I like that name. Realize. Not realize. But why is this failing? Tokyo runtime error, runtime worker. It is very much on the Rust side of things and in this plugin. So, this may be a bug. Paul says, it's pretty cool. You spent your time on the weekend configuring PowerShell and Windows Terminal. Yeah. Windows Terminal is pretty solid. I've honestly been tempted to try Alacrity, if only for Mac. For many reasons, really. But the way that I use it on my Mac, Alacrity would be perfectly fine. Like its feature set would be sufficient for how I use it, despite it not being like fully baked, depending on how you or what you need. But the Windows terminal, I don't really have a reason to switch off of it. I've been pretty happy with it. But my shell, I've switched to new shell a while ago. We can maybe look at my dot files, but it's got to be more than a year at this point. I don't know if it'd be more than 2 years though. We could look at my dot files. That would at least give some indication on when I have used it in an official capacity. Obviously, I was playing with it before then, before I decided to switch it more wholesale. But I haven't actually used new shell or switched to using new shell on my Mac yet. That still uses I think it's on whatever default it came with. So probably ZSH, I think, when I got it. But those I mean, I like new shell, but it's not where I have to switch everything to it. I've got Starship on everything though. I love having Starship in that context, because this is always something that, like when we're troubleshooting or pairing, somebody, every time we run a command, if we see an error, those are always questions. So the fact that it's like just there cuts out just a bunch of the high level questions. What do you have? What are you running? Why is this not working? So having that there, either in your, like whatever shell you're running, having it set up, it ends up being really nice. I've got, I don't think I have it actually set up on my PowerShell though. I don't use PowerShell that much, to be honest. Most of what I'm doing these days on Windows, I use new shell. But I do think I'm not gonna spin it up, but I think I do have it set up in WSL. I don't remember. A lot of my dev these days is on Mac, primarily because that's a work thing. Whenever we're streaming though, that's on Windows, so you get the touched less version, but still slightly refined for the stream. Anyways, Starship. It's running the thing. We're getting it popping up. Okay, so that position works. So this would be, if we look at the enumeration, we have done position.tray right. So that would be where we're attaching it in the middle of the tray to the like right hand side of it. I'll give new shell a try. I do prefer all the Linux commands on my work computer. It's like a new shell is like a more powerful version of Bash. So there is potentially some translation that you need to do if you're comfortable with Linux or WSL or whatever flavor. But once you're comfortable with it, most of like the commands that you run day to day, it's not going to make a difference. Okay, we're talking about it. Let's go look at my probably severely outdated dot files at this point. Z profile, ZSH. Okay, maybe it has been more than a year. When did I new shell? Last year. That's when I pushed the new shell config. I set this up though last year. So it's been more than a year since I pushed this. And if you're curious about my Starship config, and you can see I don't use it very much these days, but I was using git bash when I needed bash on Windows. But for the most part now, I pretty much switched to new shell for any my Windows native usage. I started this though, ZSH Z profile. Oh, you know what we can do? We can look at, no, app data would be Windows. History, 3 years. Oh my goodness. Was I off? So I've been using new shell for a little bit. Time is just a construct, right? Okay, so what were we doing? Oh yes. Enums, trays. We selected tray right. Positionally, it shows up like at the bottom left of the window and out. So tray right. So tray bottom, I'm guessing would be the opposite. So I think we would almost want either tray center or tray left. Let's try bottom. Tray bottom center. Let's give that a shot and see what that looks like. Definitely not what we want. But I'm actually curious what that looks like on... I'm curious what that looks like on Mac. And that is potentially some of the context that we could provide here. So one of the reasons to use this, you're positioning at well-known locations based off of the operating system. So it's giving you presets. You don't need to calculate it, and it's handling the cross operating system issue. When we're looking at these enums though, and we'll have to look at typedoc and how it's generating these. Context would be nice around how it's positioning these and how that differs on like Mac versus Windows. versus Linux, I guess. I think in this case, actually, I don't know how. I guess if you look at Mac and Windows, that's gonna be, as far as defaults go, at least the top and the bottom. I don't know what that's gonna look like. Linux, you have a little bit more control over the where those things are docked, right? So you could potentially put it on the top of your screen, I'd imagine. I don't know that I've ever tried. Anytime I use the Linux or Linux GUI, Ubuntu, whatever, um, I never touch any of the defaults. I'm a tinkerer, but not in the Linux type of tinkering. I want that stuff to just work, which is why I tend to be perfectly comfortable just using Windows and Mac. I don't have a pressing need to get into Linux in that way. Okay, so in this specific use case, I think we probably want to do tray. Bottom isn't what we want. I'm thinking we do tray left. Did we try tray right? Tray right. So, that's interesting. What is the difference between these? Tray. I mean, the bottoms make sense. It's shifted down. But if we look at tray center, how many instances? It is a single instance that continues to be remounted. One of the downsides of JavaScript, or at least the way that I've implemented it, these setup pieces are, if you're at all familiar with React, I have a hook of which we do here. At the moment, it's using a use effect. So every time I make a change, Vite hot reloads, that whole thing gets remounted. I get another tray icon. So technically a single instance, just multiple tray icons keep being created. So like functionally, I think doesn't matter what one I click on, which is a little bit amusing. But if I kill it and restart and we just have that single mount, that's what it'll end up looking like in production. And then in theory, we could solve for that too. I don't know what I'm getting to there though. That's interesting. Is it the tray config in here? Targets, resources. I don't remember that happening before. Yeah, I don't know why there's an empty one there. But first mount, it should just be the one icon, ideally. Okay, you're using Angular at the moment. You only dipped your toe into React. Yeah, I mean, that's, I've got familiarity with React, so that's what I defaulted to. I've got no animosity towards Angular. And I kind of imagine this is potentially something that you'll run into in any framework in the web view, because at least if you have hot reloading on, because it's gonna like refresh that page for you basically. You're gonna get a remount, and unless you somehow pulled this out of the life cycle and or check that it exists, it's just going to continue to do that. Did we? So we did some stuff with the setup. Tray, tooltip, setup tray. So probably the 2 points that cause the most jink in this, like doing it through the web view, is that every one of the APIs are effectively async, because I think at least the vast majority of them are firing off invoke calls, and those are async. It's hitting the Rust. That means that, especially the stuff that's like setup, initial load type things, you need to handle the async bit, which is kind of a pain. Like I think potentially what we could do is in our main render function. So this is the thing that runs like when it's loaded. We have an HTML file, and pretty much all of the frameworks have something in this vein. HTML file loads, script tag fires off, runs through JavaScript. The JavaScript then attaches to an element and uses that as like its root that it can then JavaScript create the DOM off of. In theory, this runs once. So we could, in theory, do something like the tray setup. So at first, that script first loads, it does the tray setup, and like it initializes the tray. The second sticky point is, and some of this might be Tauri APIs could use a little bit more elbow grease in these areas, but I think with I don't think we have any docs on the tray either. That's another thing that I'm interested in addressing. But can we look at the API reference maybe? Let's look at the API reference. Tray, where are you? Tray. API. Tray. Browsers, I believe now, at least all the ones that Tauri would be targeting, support top level await in the web view. So we could potentially do this in the web view. But my hope or my expectation is that I could then take that tray and extend it within React. So through the, basically like your web view, whatever framework code you're doing, I want to at some point add like the ability to do settings or be able to tweak some of these bits. Like if I wanted to, right now this just pops open in the window. If I wanted to like right click and have a menu or something to close, etc., it would be kind of nice to just either have that configurable in a settings menu or otherwise configure it in React and then hook it up to some sort of like settings menu. But that means that I need that handle or somehow an attachment to that tray in my React context. Context not being like specifically React context, but like I need React aware of this tray. So that being said, we are doing a new tray icon here, and that's how you get the tray. There's a lot of sets. One get. We can potentially do a get, but we need to know the ID. So now we need to deal with we can, once React starts up, we can potentially get to that context if it's been created already. But now we need to like cross that boundary. How do we get that ID into React? I mean, we could potentially pass it in here somehow. So like if we do, and I guess at this point we're almost there already. If we would do something like this, top level await should work. Setting the tooltip, sure, fine. Tray should then have a tray.id. So we could potentially pass some context down here, because this is going to be static once it's created on first mount. We would get an ID here that we could then pass. All that being said, though, I believe hot reloading will also fire off. I think this is going to be run every time too. So, like, we've got a script tag here. I think even if we did like, I believe Vite, the hot reloading in Vite actually reruns. It remounts this whole indexed HTML every time, I believe. So if we go here, here, and open up this, we got a boop. So now if we save, we'll save something here. Okay, maybe it's just remounting the component. So we could maybe do that. That might actually make our experience better if we put it in the index HTML. If we put it here, let's do a console.log boop in DOM render. So now anytime we make change here, it says it's reloading the source view app.ts. So we might actually get away with it then. And I don't know how it works in Angular. You might know offhand, Paul, but the wiring to do hot reloading, we might actually be able to get away with in general if we hoist that creation up. So rather than doing more of a React hook to more of a generic works in any framework hook, and in some ways we already have it set up for that. So I have this hook set up. It does use an API, but this is strictly just to start the thing and put it into a state that I can easily use here. So effectively take a default set of menu items, do the initialization for each of these features, and then pass that context back so as to put into a React context. They're set up in a way where I'm expecting them to be cross-framework. So we could, in theory, completely shift this out. If all we need is the hooks, we can potentially derive that. So we could run this outside of React and then pass in basically this handle. So this would then return an ID. So we could handle all of this outside of React. And then we get an ID here and we would have that ID. So if we want to still do more with it, we can create the handle in React and add that to the context, and it should still work. That probably is the way to go then, because it's taking all of these, the app API, which are non-React specific. You should be able to use that with Angular. And this hooks setup is combining them all and then tying it into React. If we just take out the React bit and just run them sooner, I think that would then be applicable across frameworks. That's a lot. Are you with me, Paul? both in understanding and not checked out. So to maybe to summarize, if you're interested in adding, say, React, or excuse me, if you're interested in adding Angular support to the tray template that we have, I think the first step that we would do is the setup piece, lift it out of React and run it before React starts. And the pieces that we need or want to then still have context within React are passed as IDs. So sort of like static-ish values that we could then rebuild the context. And that rebuilding of the context could be done separately in each framework. So our framework integrations, rather than writing a whole one of these, our framework integrations would be grabbing the ID and regenerating the handle effectively. I think that probably is the way to go. Because then I would also get rid of this issue, which is, that's a lot of icons. And it would be nice not to have that. So long story short, shift it out of the render loop. And I think that gives us both cross-framework support. And then we also get rid of all these, all those, which would be nice. You've been using Svelte with your Tauri project for tinkering, but now you feel the need to do Angular. It sounds like a TypeScript service to work on any front end. Yeah, and I think that's the... So in no ways am I presuming that this tray app template is the replacement for anything in Tauri. It's more just... if you're using this use case, it's likely that you're going to use all of these plugins. If we can just have a thing that combines all these snippets together and you run a single thing and you're golden. I mean, I suppose in theory we could publish these as packages. And maybe that's an eventuality, but at least for the front end, if you have a single thing to call and you just get all these pieces set up for you and you can roll with it, that's I think that's helpful. But that doesn't address the like Rust side of things. So it would be potentially helpful to publish these as plugins, but I would definitely want to do it in a more official capacity if that's something that we're leaning towards, of which that would probably require a bunch more design work. Steps. Do it all in steps. I am a big fan of incremental. Okay, so all of that being said, where are we at now? We have the icons. It is opening up the thing. It is currently set to trace center. The problem is it covers a bunch of this. And we don't want bottom. So center is very much... Oh, I did top left. Tray top. Tray left is what I want. So it's attaching it to... We might have some, like, depending on the positioning and the size of stuff, that might be why we're not actually seeing much difference in tray left and tray right. Because functionally they seem the same. And also, like, we've got a whole bunch of icons. It might be positioning based off of this. So if this is the root one and we've got all these remounts, if I'm expecting it to be positioned off of this one, that might be a bad assumption. I think it is potentially positioning it off of this one, which would make more sense. So I got tray right. What does tray left look like? So that is the right here. The problem is it's still cut off. in tray bottom right. So I think this is probably the part where we because if we do like tray bottom left, I wonder how that's going to look on different operating systems. And yeah, we've got some here. Let's cancel this and let's restart it just to make sure that we have got that one mount. At the moment, having these ideas in a Git repo in is great in and of. Wow. Rewind. At the moment, having these ideas in a Git repo is great in itself. Yeah. I think at the very least, it's a good way to start having this conversation. And our documentation on a bunch of these pieces is not great at the moment. So it's a way to be able to spin up and test snippets and pieces that can then be moved into the docs. All right, so if I click this, it is being positioned on the tray bottom left. Okay. If we look at the code for this, let's go to GitHub. So we need this put in here. It's required to get the tray relative positions to work. So this is doing some additional moves. We can call this, but we don't have any fine-tune adjustments from there. So let's see. Move. Trait impl function. Here's our enums. So if we look at the tray, we have tray left. So what is it doing? Okay, and they do. This is actually I'm glad that I looked at this. The Y is defined here. It redefines them if we're on Windows or Mac. So we're getting an X and a Y. The things that change based on the operating system is the Y. So it's going to be X positionally set up. So that means that if we do like tray right, what is tray left to tray right? We have a Y is based off the window size. Where's tray X being set? Tray. Okay, so tray icon. Tray bottom, tray center, bottom right. Okay, so bottom would makes an adjustment on the X as well. I mean, I'm honestly probably okay with just tray center for the moment. That's probably going to be fine. It would be nice to have a little bit more of an attachment piece though. So if we look at, this is calculating an X. So tray right and tray left don't calculate an X. They use the tray X and Y. Tray right does use tray width. What is tray width? So it doesn't take into account the actual width of the window. And I think that's probably the, because there's like positionally, it's attaching it to like the left, I guess the left corners of the window, depending on if you're on Mac or on Windows. If you're on Windows, it would be on the bottom. So it's going to use Y unless Y is less than 0. Then it's going to use the tray plus the tray height. So it's going to position it like up here-ish. And what this is doing is, I'm guessing on Mac they're actually flip-flopped. So Y is coming down from the top. So tray Y would be, you know, the little bar. That's, I guess. Okay. So then X here, they actually do say tray width. But here, tray X. So in no cases do we use tray size. Match position, screen window, screen position. Okay, so it's pulling these out of tray position, tray size. Okay, so where's tray position? Tray position comes from this. So based off the state of the tray, we are getting the X and the Y. So we'd almost want like something to also consider the width of the window. Because this is positioning tray left and tray right, but still left aligned on the window. What if we want the window right aligned? I think that's the only open question that I have. I went too far back. Positioner plugin. And I don't think there's anything, I don't see any notes or code to actually deal with that. There is this. I want to look at this. So the tray icon emits a physical size, so the scale factor should not matter. So this is based off of the icon. We're setting an app state. So we need this feature. We need the tray icon set up. It is using the app state. So within, and we've talked about state management a little bit in the past streams, but one of the options for more of the ephemeral state is to store that in Rust, and you can store a state directly with your app. So that would be equivalent to like, in some ways equivalent to like local storage in the web view. The local storage in the web view though is going to be a little bit more sticky. So I guess maybe that's not quite equivalent. It would be more like a variable assignment. Once you restart the app, it goes away. So if you assign a value to a variable in your web view, it's going to last for as long as that like variable sticks around. As soon as you like restart the app or refresh or it goes out of scope or whatever, then it you'll lose that value. But if you like put it as a global functionally equivalent, so this is like adding a value to like a window dot state. Would this be like an RxJS type state? I want to say no. So there's in your web view, there's many ways that you can, or many like frameworks that you can effectively. It's a fancy way to handle like variable assignment. All of the functionality is around like doing that in a ergonomic way, in a way where you're not like mutating state. There's like immer for immutable updates that feel mutable. So any of those, Redux, RxJS, immer, etc., React state, signals, all of those would be like, if you refresh the page, that goes away. So you need something to persist that state. So some of them have default wiring or wiring that you can opt into, which then persists it to local storage. This app state would be the equivalent of one of those state pieces. Oh, so I guess yes, maybe it is. It could be. I'm confusing myself here. I would say it is. Yes, you're right. It is like RxJS state that is not persisted to local storage. But functionally, this is much lower level. Maybe it doesn't have the APIs that one of the various state libraries would have. So this is less like RxJS and more like doing window dot fancy store equals value. Technically, window is available everywhere, but as soon as you refresh the page, that would go away. Anyways, so what it's doing is when if you happen to move the icon, which is probably more of a Mac thing, I think, it would then readjust that app state to appropriately position. But there's still no window attachment piece. So we're still in that situation where the enums, as far as the tray goes, every one of the tray pieces are going to be attaching to the left side of your window. Which honestly, if your tray is on the right, I would prefer to be attaching to the right side of the window. So this might be, if anybody's interested in looking into this, that would be something that I would I would appreciate. I think that makes the most sense to me personally. But it could be very well that we're missing something. I don't think so, but it's entirely possible. And I think what that would then end up looking like would be we would go into ext.rs. We've got a bunch of enums that are handled. Physical position, we would then add, the naming would be interesting. But these are all based off of screen size and the window size. You would do in here, this would additionally need to consider the window size. So basically you're doing a right aligned or a left aligned almost. Or left edge aligned, right edge aligned, something like that. So we already have the window size in here. Position, where's that coming from? Window size here, yeah. So it's already in scope. It would probably be adding in a new enum. So we lost our to-do list because of this weird state thing. Like this just seems so sticky, and I don't know if it's a weird dev feature, but every time I delete these, they come back. And every time I add new ones, they still come back. Refresh. See, it didn't save the old one, but it saved those other ones. And it seems to work if I slowly delete them. But then at some point in the future, they seem to come back. So like if I kill this and restart, there's something sticky that's happening. Like that state is not being saved properly. you need to dig into if it's a my code thing or if it's a the state plugin code thing. Ooh. There you go. Tray position not set. We ran into this before and I didn't realize what it was actually running into, but app state. There's no app state yet. So the fact that it's not visible yet means that it hasn't determined what the tray position is. And that I think is what my actual error is. So we would basically need to, I'm not going to do it now, but on first load, we would need to like set a window position. Are you using the plug store for holding the to-do item? Yes. So and we did this 2-3 streams ago. In this specific one, we've hooked up the store. So it uses the plugin store. That persists state basically to like a .bin file. And it's a key value store, and I am setting it up. If it doesn't exist, then set up the store. And then I'm adding that context to React context, of which then in my to-do, we have a handle submit and handle delete. So we're calling it to-do.remove. What's also slightly awkward is that the component library that I'm using has this hook function, which makes it easy to load these values. This seems to be working fine, but it doesn't have anything to actually help you on append or on remove sync that state upstream. So in my handle submit and handle delete functions, I am both changing the store and changing my like local state. So where do I find this version, or the different branches of? Okay, so this is the stream to do, which I'm pretty certain is up to date. We have the stream to do. This is generated from that template. So this is me using the thing that I made so we can have a to-do list on stream, and I'm going to slowly take it further. Hopefully I can hook it up to my the other software that I'm running to stream. But this is basically taking it and making it my own. This is the generic piece, of which we have the system tray, the global shortcuts, and I can never remember the last one. Good thing I wrote it. Notifications. OS native notifications. So as a functional or as a specific use case, I'm expecting that when you implement a tray app that you'd find those three useful. And then we've got the JavaScript and Rust implementations of those. So what we're using and what we have in the app API is very similar to what we have in the stream to do. Pretty similar. I've potentially updated these a little bit, but the idea is that we have these like functional pieces that we can pretty much use framework agnostically, and we have it all in a template. You grab it and just pull in the pieces that you want. And we've implemented as much Rust as we can and as much JavaScript as we can, with the expectation that somebody would choose one or the other and then potentially like mix and match a little bit. So like the global shortcuts, I could see those being done completely on the Rust side of things. I only care about making this thing pop up with a single shortcut. I don't need any of the dynamic pieces that come from the web view. I could do all JavaScript except for the global shortcuts. So both from you get to choose which direction to go, but also from you can then pull functions back and forth. And snippets, we haven't really done anything with that either, but the store setup would potentially make sense as a snippet. So it's a thing, snippets, the idea of a snippet is that it's a piece which is a little bit more involved than something I would copy and paste out of the docs. So it's like docs example plus plus, but also something that isn't necessarily going to be useful in every project. My assumption, though, is that these are going to be useful in nearly every project. So it makes sense to just have those implemented. We do have a few issues. The positioner plugin, of which is what we're talking about today. So I think I would really like the right aligned. I think for this use case, I'm going to just go with the center. Tray center. And I think what we've done in stream to do, I'll end up pulling it back into this and effectively closing out this issue. But there are a couple other, if you're interested in this use case and you're interested in setting up a Angular or otherwise abstracting pieces out enough that we could do Angular as well, I would appreciate any help. I'm definitely I can get along in Angular, but definitely more comfortable with React, which is why we started with that. I think that's about it, though. We wanted to look at the docs. What did we get into? We're at about an hour and a half. I think we're actually going to call it there for the day. I do want to update the docs, and I'm probably going to what we did today. I'm going to pull that into the template and then pull anything useful out of that work into the docs. And I'm going to need to deal with this trade position not set. So on initialization, I basically need to like set an initial position. So I suppose in some ways I could do that with like a splash screen. Do a splash screen, pop it open, and then hide it, and that will end up indirectly setting a position, I think. Maybe. Either way, though, sneaky. Yeah, well, I'll have to dig into that. I'm not sure what context is meaning that it's not set yet. It could also be very well that this is a dev only thing, depending on how the mount order and stuff goes. We'll figure that out though. And then as far as the docs go, I think what we have there is rather sufficient as far as setup and implementation goes. I think, and I'm kind of noticing this in a lot of the plugin docs, is that we kind of need that what and why context. Why should I use this over just doing it myself? And or what does this do and why should I use it rather than just implementing it myself? And that would be where we say, kind of in the beginning when we were going through things, this would make sense if you want to have some built-in presets that are cross operating system. If you want to do anything outside these handful of presets, do your own thing. Don't use this plugin. And I think that's probably going to be the bulk of what we would need to actually add to the docs. So since we've gone over that already, I'm not going to do that. And I'm, a little bit shorter stream than last time. As far as content for next streams, you're definitely struggling with the SQL plugin. with finding some kind of example of how it's used. Yeah, I'm always happy to see you, Paul, and answer your questions. It's I much more enjoy the process of going through and learning these things when y'all are here to ask questions. That's part of why I do this. I don't think I've really done anything with the SQL plugin though. I'll have to look at my my list of stream topics. I need to get a couple more guest things squared away. Some of which I think we're tentatively going to do another docs stream. I am curious though what you're running into with the SQL plugin, because I do want to. I'm very much going to get into not necessarily the SQL plugin, but I want to get into like local first app stuff in OnStream. And I think that's likely going to be including something to do with SQLite. I don't know how that's going to end up working out. But what I think is interesting, both from like a content perspective, but also how can we use this architecture? When you're thinking of a local first app, you have some expectation of owning or storing the content locally. I think the default expectation for these apps is that you're developing it in the context of a web browser. So you'd use something like local storage, which we can do. And I think we could. There's like replicache is probably one of the bigger ones. Like CR SQLite, we've looked at that on stream. TinyBase, we've looked at that on stream. But all of those don't have that expectation that you potentially have SQLite available to you. So if we could do some of that lifting that is expected to be done in the cloud, if we could do that within the Tauri app, I think that would be a really neat architecture, to where the convenience of having it in the cloud is merely a convenience and not a requirement, where you could theoretically run the app on one computer as long as the networking all worked out and you had the app running on another computer. I would imagine that we should be able to get those to sync in some way, because functionally it's the same as, what's the difference between two computers versus one computer here and one in the cloud? You do at some point kind of need a source of truth or some way to like C or CD determine which thing wins. But I think we could, I think the peer-to-peer use cases, it's really interesting at the very least. And I think digging into that on stream is going to be hopefully something that y'all find useful. So long story short, SQL is coming, at least SQLite in some way. So that might be maybe hit me up on one of the socials or something, Paul, and we can talk through what you're running into the SQL plugin, and maybe we make a stream about some of it. Cool. Yeah, check hit the subscribe button, do the YouTube things. We're going to be we'll be live again next week. What social? I don't know. I have them listed. Oh, not LinkedIn. That's probably the easiest process of elimination. But yeah, I'm active on Discord and Twitter are probably the big ones, and then not X, Twitter. And then I do get notifications about Blue Sky and Mastodon, but I look at Twitter more often than those, I would say. Hey Chris, good to see you. Thanks for catching the end. Yeah, for version 1, you're trying to do local, to do a task time tracking for freelancer to track time. Yeah. The there's another app that we've done some on stream, but a lot of the work on that app I've done off stream, and it's a finance cash flow analysis primarily app, which is fancy accounting terms for a different way to track and handle your finances. Much more used in business. I think it's very helpful as a function to think about personal finance, and I think it's just not used there because there's no tools to make it easy. So I've been slowly working on this thing, and one of the tenets that is probably slowing me down in implementing stuff is that I want to do local first. So I'm involved with Tauri. It also makes sense to do a Tauri app with it. Long story short, I think that's probably going to be the thing that when we start tinkering around with local first, that might be the place where we start doing some of that tinkering, if it makes sense. So yes, hit me up. We've got streams to schedule. I think we're going to end up doing another doc stream. And we just need to, Simon and I need to finalize that. And we can answer questions in a doc stream and kind of write docs as we're going through. And TBD on the other ones, I guess. And I say this every time. We'll schedule more stuff ahead of time rather than the night before. Tune in next week, Tuesday, to see if I follow through on that. Have a good week, everybody. Bye.